of District 7030 and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am extremely happy to be here, and that the facilitator for this evening is a friend, Joy Adamson. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this fabulous session, Joy, and I know it will be all that we expect it to be and more. Public speaking is most definitely an art, and I have a lot to learn myself in this new role that I'm in. So I have my notebook and my pencil, and I hope to be making lots of notes. I know I'll be making lots of notes, and I'll be practicing, so I'll let you all know how it goes. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the evening, folks.
Thank you, DG. And I think we all have a lot to learn. I too have my notebook just ready and waiting here. So I will now ask Past President Liz, who is also a very good friend of our presenter this evening, to present her bio. Liz?
Thank you. Good evening, all. Thank you, PAG Luana, District Governor Sonia, DG Leslie, our guest this evening, Joy, or any past district governors on the call, distinguished Rotarians. Tonight, it gives me great pleasure, extremely great pleasure, to introduce my sister, Joy, to you this evening. Joy is currently the Deputy Chief Education Officer at the Ministry of Education, and she started off her career in education about 34 years ago, and she was a trained teacher and spent 13 years teaching science in the secondary schools. Now, Joy has taught some very high-ranking officials in Barbados, and even the famous singer, Rihanna. She spent 21 years in the Ministry of Education, serving as a senior education officer and acting on several occasions as chief education officer. Joy has a passion for public speaking, and I can tell you because I was part of, Joy and I met at UWI, and Joy was in our group. And Joy, by the end of the 2-year period, doing our master's degree, we were all speaking very well, because Joy made sure she taught us very well. And we were kind of like the top group throughout that program. But she has a passion, and she's a distinguished Toastmaster and has held several positions in the Toastmaster organization, serving as district governor in 2009 to 2010. During her journey as a Toastmaster, she has made several presentations at Toastmasters conferences, Toastmasters clubs across the Caribbean. She visited Ghana several times, meeting with the clubs here in Ghana. DTM Joy is also presenting Art of Public Speaking to several organizations in Barbados. Joy holds, apart from her trained teacher certificate, an executive master's degree with distinction, I have to add, and is a certified facilitator of the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. Fellow Rotarians and guests, it is my pleasure to have Joy present to all of us tonight, and I know, yes, I'll be making copious notes as well. Joy, the screen is yours.
Thank you, VP Liz. Joy, don't be surprised if some of the questions coming at you is about Rihanna, because we didn't know that you had such an esteemed public icon, in your classes. So over to you, Joy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. And it is a pleasure, great pleasure to be here presenting to the Rotarians, so district governors, Sonia, yes, my good friend, and to Liz and Luana, who I recently met. Liz, I've known for a long time. Yeah, she's my Guyanese sister from another mother. The past district governors, Rotarians, Rotaractors, interactors, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to present to you this afternoon on becoming a bold and confident public speaker. And my task, they have given me 45 minutes to an hour. And this is something that we can do, I am sure, for over a week or a day or so, but I will try wherever possible to stick to the time limit. I know we do have some French speaking persons in the group, so I will try to speak as slowly as possible so everybody will be able to follow. They say that Barbadians speak very quickly, and therefore I will have to slow down. Now, You may have the best idea, the best product, the best proposal, but if you cannot present it in a professional manner, it will never be recognized as valuable. And this statement was made by the president of the International Trading Corporation. So public speaking, it is important that you therefore get the skills required to move, because 74% of people suffer from speech anxiety. It says that 73% of the males have some sort of speech anxiety, whereas 75% of the females. Normally it is females who lead in everything, but this is not something that we want to lead in, for sure. This is not a statistic that we want. I want all of you to, and I know that Liz and Luana will be monitoring the chat, one word in the chat when you are told that you have to make a speech. What is the first thing that comes to your mind? How do you feel when you have your president call upon you to give that vote of thanks or to present, or you're told that you have to speak to a group? What's one word? If we can have persons putting in the chat. And yes, I'm trying to monitor the presentation in the chat. Nervous, that is true, Monique. Dread, anxiety, anxious. Any other words that persons would think about when they're coming in the chat? When you have to speak, fear. One person is excited, that's good, I'm glad to hear that. That we do have persons here who are excited. Scared, yes, these are all words that we associate. Now, the fear of public speaking, they say that generally most people fear speaking in public. Even there is a greater fear than death. And when you are fearful, you will sweat. Some people said that you will start to shake. You will feel nauseous. You want to throw up. Some persons have diarrhea. How many times do you go in the toilet before you actually have to speak? You might have a dry mouth and you're all of a sudden you need water. So it's always good to have that glass of water near to you, that sip of water. It is important because you do suffer from that. How many of you hyperventilate? And before you, when you look out and you see this audience, even if it is online, if it is face-to-face, your muscles tense up. Sometimes you feel dizzy. You get shortness of breath. But what most speakers have, and I can tell you, I also have it, because every speaker, once you want to do a good job, you're going to have those butterflies in your stomach. So these are realities. This is real. It happens to everybody, and don't feel that you're any different. As it relates to public speaking, I want to know from you, what stage are you at in this metamorphosis? Are you an egg now starting out, never had to make a presentation? Are you a larva? Yes, I've made a couple of presentations. So I am not that good, but I think that, I can see myself as a larva. We do have a butterfly. Put in the chat, what stage are you at? Are you that pupa developing? You think that you're there, or are you that butterfly? You're perfect. So Roma, I will be calling on you because you have some tips. We have some larvae, we have some pupa. Who else do we have? Generally larva. So all of us, yes, we do have some eggs, persons in there who are developing. All of us generally will be at some stage in our development as it relates to public speaking. Nymph in French is what? Larva? Those, right, yes, pupa. So we do have persons at different stages in this group. We do have some butterflies. And that is something that I want you all to remember. When you're making a presentation, you will have persons in the audience who will be at different stages. So you have to really remember and acknowledge them. Remember that stage that you're at. This evening, I have two main objectives. Because of the time, I'm going to be talking about making a powerful speech and how to prepare short speeches. And I thought it is important that we look at how to prepare short speeches, because these are speeches that most of us will have to do at some point in time. So two main objectives. Let us start with the first one as we move forward this evening. Powerful speeches. We all want to make powerful speeches. How do we do that? Three parts of presenting and getting to this powerful speech. We need to prepare, we need to plan, and we need to present. And one word that I think that we need to remember all the time moving forward is after we've done these three things, we have to practice, practice, practice. So prepare. Let's look at what you need to do to prepare. Before you start to write, you have to know the target audience. You have to know the time allocated for your presentation. You have to know the location. Is it going to be online? Is it going to be face-to-face? You have to know the type of speech expected of you. So before you start to write, before you put pen to paper, certain things that you have to look out for. Who is that audience? How old are they? So Luana would tell you that before I made my presentation, I would say, well, how many persons are you expecting? What is the age range of the audience? So I'm told that I have Rotaractors, interactors, so I can have persons in this group who are 12 years old. Are there any persons below 18 in the group? If you are, you can just put it in the chat. Yes, we have persons below 18. Do we have persons over 50 in the group? We might have some Rotarians. Liz, you put your hand up because I know you're in that age group. So we do have different age ranges. We have males. Look, we have persons who are under 18, and I have 3 persons who have indicated so far in the chat that they're under 18. You need me too. Okay, so we have quite a few persons under 18. So I need to make sure that as I'm speaking, that I also speak to them as well as to speak to the persons over 50. I need to make sure that I'm aware of the time of day that my audience will be speaking. Some of you had a rough day. We heard from District Governor Sonia that she had a rough day after traveling. So therefore we know she's tired and she doesn't want me to go on and on and on. We know that some of the young ones might have been in school. It might have been online. The majority of the Caribbean is still online. So we're doing it remotely. Some of you might have been face-to-face and you don't want to go too long now. So we don't want this lady to talk too long. So I need to know the time of day. Is it going to be after lunch where most persons are going to be sleepy? Is it going to be early in the morning? I want to know your values and your beliefs. So therefore we have persons from Aruba to Jamaica, we have Martinique, we have persons who might be of different religious orientations in this group. So I have to be very careful of my language and not think that everybody here, for instance, is Christian, because I know that we might have others who are there. So I have to know the beliefs and the values of the group. I have to know how to pitch my language, if I'm going to be technical or if I'm going to be simple. I have to know how formal it is. So is it that we are at a beach, we are a retreat, so therefore you can dress down? Or is it going to be formal, so you have to dress up? Always try to be in the middle. You know me, so therefore are you going to believe that I'm credible? As you had an introduction, but what is the familiarity between me and you? Who is your audience? You need to get that information before you pen to paper. Okay, I will slow down. How much time do you have? What's the length of the presentation? 45 to 60 minutes? Is it a 7-minute presentation? Try not to run over the time allocated to you. So I assume we have a timer in this group who will be keeping me up to date so that I wouldn't get carried away and be too long in the presentation. Because we have to realize we have to value persons' time. So we have to make sure that if we say that we're going to start at 6:30, that we start at 6:30. And if we're going to finish at 7:30, we're going to finish at 7:30. If you think you're going to go over your time, ask your audience for permission to do that, or you can finish and then say we can have a discussion after, or we can have a part 2, right, Luana? So that we can move on if we run out of time at any time. So plan where you are going to cut if your time runs out. So how much time do you have to make that presentation? Where are you going to be presenting this in terms of the location? Are you just going to be in a small boardroom? Are you going to be in a large conference area? You have to know the area that you're going to be in. Is it going to be face-to-face? Are you going to have a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting? Are you going to be meeting via Skype? Therefore, set yourself up, set the stage, understand where you're going to be sitting, Make sure that the lighting is correct so that they will be able to see you. So you have to be able to know all these things before you actually write. Now, what type of speech are you expected to deliver? Will it be in an informative speech where you are telling them about something and giving them information about a product, information about something that you want to do, a proposal? Is it going to be a persuasive speech so that you are persuading them to your point of view and calling them to action? All of us must wear masks. All of us must get vaccinated or not get vaccinated, whichever stage. I'm not here to preach to anybody. And then a special occasion speech. Is it going to be a humorous one? Is it going to be a toast? What type of speech are you expected to make? And these are things that you have to ask before you actually start writing. After you prepare, you have to plan. And how do you plan? You're given a topic. So my topic is public speaking, tips for successful presentations. So I have to have an idea, what will I want to put in that presentation? Study the topic. Put your ideas into a logical form. Try not to put many things into it. In Toastmasters, we always say at least 3 to 4 main points, because persons can't really take in a lot more than that afterwards. Sell the ideas so that the audience understands. That means, therefore, that you're not to confuse them. Speak their language. Make sure that they understand the words. Use simple words. Everybody, from the 18-year-old to the person over 60, can understand. Do not leave them confused, because then you would have wasted your time and their time. Speak from their point of view. So the young children now are into, my grandson is into Roadblocks and Minecraft, and even Fortnite. So you can talk about these things. If you're not into Fortnite, then you might be the only one. The new video that they're watching, Pix or Six or whatever the name is, I need to get the young person to tell me what that is. But speak from their point of view. So study the topic, put ideas in a logical form, sell the ideas so the audience understands, and don't confuse them, and speak from their point of view. One of the things I will want you to do, and this is me personally, Joy Adamson, I am not speaking about religion. I am not speaking about sexual persuasion. I am not speaking about politics. Those are 3 topics that I'm avoiding. So don't invite me to speak on those. If you've been invited to speak on a topic that you know nothing about, don't accept it. If you were invited to speak on a topic that you really not agree with, not accept it, decline. It is nothing wrong with doing that. So what you need to do is to make sure you study that topic and you prepare to make that presentation. So we prepared, we plan. The main part for this writing now is, how do you organize? And we all know this from at school. You were taught this. Introduction, a body, a conclusion. And that is what a speech is. Just like an essay, just like a composition, just like a paper that you have to do. You must have an introduction, you must have a body, and you must have a conclusion. It must be like a sandwich that you're actually making. In the introduction, you are attracting the audience to you. And we give you some tips on what to do for the introduction. In the body, what we said just now, at least 3 main points. So we would want each of those points being supported with some sort of fact, information, a story, an anecdote, and then you conclude. You call them to action. What do you want them to do with this information? But before we actually get to talk about the format, remember your protocol at the beginning. So I listened very carefully for the introduction given by Luann, given by Liz, in terms of the order that I will have to speak. And every organization will have some form of protocol. Always acknowledge the very important persons in the group, the VIPs. Every country, every organization will have what we call the table of precedence. So your district governor, the past district governors, and then you go down to Rotarians, and then always end with ladies and gentlemen, students. That will cover everybody. One thing, one of my pet peeves, and I know I have Liz with this as well, there is nothing called protocol having been established. What happens is that persons who should know, individuals who should know better, saying this all the time. Well, Liz gave, or Luann gave the introductions and they listed everybody. I'm not going to do it now. So protocol haven't been established. That is not protocol. At least acknowledge one important persons. And if you don't want to say distinguished ladies and gentlemen, start. Or ladies and gentlemen, and begin. But never have state protocol having been established. I am hoping that if there's one thing that you take from this presentation, is that one phrase, protocol having been established. So we would want you to know the table of precedence. Always try to find out from the organizers the protocol, who will be there. And for sure, even if you're given a list, be aware of if those persons are in the group, so that you do not identify, because we always have that, especially when we have, and I'm not picking, I don't know, we might have politicians here, are very important persons, and they say they're coming, so you have a protocol list, and then they don't turn up, and then persons are actually recognizing them. You're looking around and you're saying, but they're not in the group, they're not on the meeting. So make sure you know the protocol at the beginning. Now, our speech, our presentation. Introduction. A startling question. Did you try to maim or kill anybody today? If you were texting or WhatsApping on your phone while driving, well, you did. And then you can start talking about the evils of using your cell phone while driving, the number of accidents. You could bring your statistics. Make a challenging statement. Stop eating bread. Your belly will get flatter for it. How many of you could do that? And then you go through the reason why. So you began your speech like that. So you pull them in. What's she saying? What's that about? What about a quotation? Everybody knows about that. And therefore, most speeches start with a quotation. I did. I started with a quotation. But I'm going to show you how we can use that quotation at the end as well. A lot of persons like to refer to the Bible. A lot of persons can start with an illustration or a story and then get into their presentation. You can display an object. This implement caused persons to get into fights in the Caribbean, a cricket bat. And then you can go on and talk about cricket. You can go on and you can talk about this device is evil. It stops persons from socializing, talking, and you can go on and you can talk about. So you can start with an object, a picture of a child. This is Kai. Doesn't he look cute? And then you can go on and talk about that. An attention-getting generalization. And in my preparation, I learned, and I can begin my speech with this, the first service project of the Rotary, of the first Rotary Club in Chicago, started with the installation of toilets over 104 years ago. And then you can talk about the number of clubs that we have, over the 44,000, is it, that we actually have, and you can move from that. So when you're beginning your speech or your presentation, look for a way to actually start it to grab that audience, keep them intrigued, let them want to listen to you. That's our introduction. Avoid beginning with an apology. The worst one, I'm sorry to be late. I have a cold. I'm going to be coughing in between here. You don't need those. Don't start with a story or joke not related to the topic, because there is some myth out there that when you begin with a joke, it relaxes the audience. And therefore people pull jokes from all over that sometimes have nothing to do with the speech that they're actually giving. They might be laughing at you, not with you. Don't start with a commonplace observation. There's a lot of traffic on the roads, isn't there? And then you go on. You need to be a little different. Don't start with the cliche, you know, once upon a time, all right? We don't need those. Be creative in the way you begin your speeches. Don't start with a statement that is long and slow moving, because the audience will go to sleep before you even begin. Avoid these things at the beginning. Start with confidence and power. Let them see, okay, she knows or he knows what they're talking about. Now let's come to the body. As I said earlier, we want at least 3 to 4 main statements supported with some sort of information. In that supporting information, it could be a story, it could be a joke, something that happened to you. It could be a comparison or a simile where you are actually comparing and saying, okay, this started out in 1970 when I was in primary school. This is what we did compared to now in 2002. Sorry, not 2002, we're in 2021. So we want to begin with a comparison. So we want in our body to compare things. And people do that a lot when they're comparing statistics. We can have a quote that will support it. We would want statistics. We want dates. We want facts. We want visuals. So these 3 main points we would want to support. We have quotes, as we said earlier, but remember that the quotes throughout your speech need to be like garlic, sprinkled here and there. And there are some people who want to quote consistently, and therefore you lose the whole body of exactly what they're saying. So we don't want a lot of quotes. We want them there like garlic. We would want them to be used sparingly. Statistics, be careful with too much statistics. We would want that if you have a lot of figures, that you can present them visually, because people like to see things visually. And we would want that the statistics are not too hard for the persons to listen to. For instance, rather than saying that it was 1917, I think, that you had your first club actually forming, rather than saying 1917, I can actually say over a certain number, 104 years ago. Persons will remember the 104 rather than 1917. Instead of 1921, we can say 100 years ago. What about the statistic? People always tend to use a lot of percentages. So in your presentation, in the body of your speech, rather than saying 25% of women in your lifetime will be sexually assaulted, what about if you said in your presentation, think of 4 women, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your niece. One of these women may be sexually assaulted in your lifetime. So that's a statistic, that's a number, but the way you put it across will therefore sell the information better to the audience. Remember that visuals, very important. That's why we like to use PowerPoint. Because 90% of the information we actually take in is visual. And 40% of the persons here respond better to visual than they do to just hearing a voice, depending on the sound of that voice as well. So when you have your body and you have those 3 main points, what you need to do is support them with credible information. Make sure that you support each point, make your point come across to the audience. If you speak too long, they will go to sleep. They will start writing their lists. They will start veering off. So you want that the information, you tell them what you have to tell them, and then you shut up. So you conclude now. We have the opening, the introduction, we have the body, and we have the conclusion. The conclusion, you are not giving the speech or the presentation over again. What you're doing is you are reviewing the information. Call to action. Make a memorable statement. Tie in the conclusion with the beginning. Tell the audience what you want them to do with the information. And finish forcefully and confidently. So you don't want to, oh gosh, it's at the end now, I'm halfway through. Okay, all right, good. And you can actually see the presenter sigh of relief. You want to finish forcefully and confidently. So in that conclusion, summarize, call them to action. What do you want them to do with the information? End with a quote if you began with a quote. End with that object if you started with that object. Tie in the beginning with the end and finish forcefully and confidently. I want you to remember these main tips for powerful presentations. Tell the audience what you're going to tell them in the introduction by grabbing them in. Tell them by developing it and supporting it. Then tell them what you told them, just snippets, and conclude. When you have all of these points together, you can now present or perform. Stand tall or sit up. Make eye contact. And for those doing the online, you see this little shining dot in the middle? This is the camera. I still want to maintain the eye contact when I am doing online meetings. So I'm not looking down and looking at any notes. I'm not looking to the side. A lot of persons have a separate monitor and they're actually presenting. I want to look at my audience. Never show slip-ups. It's only you and the Lord up there know if you're making a slip-up. If you mispronounce a word, just go over and say it the correct way. We'll say, oh, sorry, oh, you don't look fumbly. Pace yourself. Wherever it is in a place for you to use gestures, then use the gestures. We don't want to be too stiff, but we want to be as natural as possible. Take care of the nonverbal messages. So if you're talking about somebody who died, you got to look like you're somebody who died. You can't be smiling and talk about somebody who died. Confident. I know that if you do all of these things, you will put on a good presentation. And the key word, the other P, we plan, we prepared, we presented, we need to practice, practice, practice. That's the only way you can get better. Let's move on to my second objective now. Halfway through in the presentation, everybody still with me, or you want me to shut up at this point? Okay, I don't see anybody saying shut up, so we will continue. Short speeches. Now there are five main short speeches that I want to talk about. Introductions, toasts, presenting an award, accepting an award, and vote of thanks. These four, very important. At some point, if you are 12, if you are 18, if you're 30, if you're 60, if you're over 60, at some point, you will have to make one of these short speeches. Let's look at introductions. And at the end, I have a handout that will be shared with all of you. So you can take your notes, yes, but I'll be sharing these with you that you will actually have. Patient percent is 100%. Introductions, 2 to 3 minutes. It is not a speech. You're not the featured speaker. You are setting the stage for the person who will be presenting. You are stating the topic, why that person is qualified to speak on the topic, why the topic is important to the group. Do not start to say, well, I believe that Joy this evening will be speaking on and telling us about this, and poor Joy ain't have that in her presentation and would not know what to say. Do not preview the topic. Do not make it a secret as to who this presenter is. You know, sometimes you listen and you're trying to look around and who's the presenter? You can state the name at least 3 times. Keep it simple. Tips for introductions. 2 to 3 minutes. Toast, again, 2 to 3 minutes. Include personal stories about the recipient. Make sure that it is suited to the occasion. So you are going to use the correct language, no foul language, no off-center language, no blue jokes. Know your audience and speak to them. Avoid cliches. So we have, on this auspicious occasion, and that is one I really hate to hear. So you're going to have your toasting glass and you're going to be standing and you're going to be sincere for 2 to 3 minutes. Do not embarrass the person that you're toasting. So I knew Liz when she was a babe in diapers, and I remember when she stooled all over herself, and poor Liz now sinking down to the ground. I'm going to pick on Liz and Sonia a lot, so don't worry. So we have the toast, 2 to 3 minutes. Be prepared. It's always good that you can say the toast off your head and you don't have to read, but if you have to read, that's accepted. At the end of the toast, this is where we tend to make the mistakes. When you finish making the toast, you're going to invite all of the guests to stand, or we have these Zoom meetings now to pay attention, to sit up. The person who you're toasting remains seated. You're going to raise your glass, raise your voice slightly, and state something that we would want to say. And I've just toasted Gerard. So Gerard, on reaching this milestone, we are raising a toast to you. To Gerard. You allow the audience to repeat that, and then you sit first, followed by the audience. So you ask the audience to stand, you raise your toast, you state that short line that you would want them to repeat, they repeat it, then you sit. So those are the tips for making toast. Presenting an award, a little bit longer. We all seen the Emmys and the Grammys, and the Oscars are coming up now. So that's about 2 to 4 minutes. Refer to the occasion while you're here. Explain the purpose of the award, so you have the award in hand, and you're explaining the purpose for this award. You're paying tribute to the recipient. How did they earn the award? And then you're going to present the award to the recipient. Again, it is a speech. You must have an opening, you must have a body, and you must have a conclusion. So you must have an idea of what the award is about, what it states, what the gift that you're presenting, how did this person earn this award? Then you're going to present it. The person accepting the award, if you're in the actual presentation, you're picking it up, you're holding the award so the audience can see, and this is something that a lot of people don't do. They tend to like hide it to themselves, or they have it very close, or they turn it away so they're actually not seeing it. Call the name of the recipient. Make sure you know how to pronounce the name so you can check with them. If it is a surprise, you can check with a friend or a colleague. Present it, step back, and let them respond, or let them then be in the limelight. The person presenting the award, you're not the most important person. It's the one receiving the award. Now, if you're accepting an award and you are aware of it even before, you can have a little speech. Most speeches for accepting the award would be 3 to 7 minutes. You're showing gratitude. You're recognizing those who made the presentation. So you're not stating, you know, I want to thank my mother, my father, my kindergarten teacher, and you go on. Thank about 1 to 2 or 3 persons, not a whole long list. And, you know, they give you the little buzzer at the end when you have the academies, the Emmys. There are persons I watched the other night, and it just went on and on and on. It was like, okay, go off the stage now. So you don't want that. You want that the person, you're showing gratitude, you're sincere, what this award really means to me, and you're modest. So you come with that pocket speech. So you see a lot of persons pulling that speech out of the pocket. If you think that you're going to be winning that award, so Liz, if you think you're going to be winning that award, have that speech there. So you'll be able to pull. If Carrie now comes and Carrie wins the award, then she would have her speech out. But everybody be prepared while you're accepting that award. Prepare to acknowledge it, be gracious with your remarks, and then you can pause for photos. Now, do not take up the people's stage so that you keep the whole flow of the presentation. Now, a person's sent to do it. Again, get off the stage, get off the stage. You just get, a lot of times, organize, if you're organizing it at Rotary, for the person to take the photos after or to decide off the stage. So pause for photos and move away. These are for the awards. Vote of thanks. And let me tell you a story, and this happened to me only on Monday. A vote of thanks cannot be done in a vacuum. It is about 2 to 3 minutes. It is the last thing on the program, but you have to be prepared to give a vote of thanks. So if I just call on an individual within this group, and I don't want to call on Carrie, let's see, Leslie. Leslie, you're going to be given the vote of thanks at the end. And poor Leslie, who was probably doing something else there and not paying attention throughout, now is a little, shoot, I have to give a vote of thanks. But I didn't hear what she said 5 minutes ago, and Leslie start panicking now. So what we would want is that you're prepared. So my story is, I was told on Monday that I had to give a vote of thanks for a recording that we were doing for the Ministry of Education. This is our education month in October. And they wanted me to come to do my recording, and they gave me a set time. I can't do that for a vote of thanks because I need to hear what happened before. So I had to then position myself to go to hear all of the other recordings so that I will be able to refer to what they said in the vote of thanks. And that is what a vote of thanks is about. You're not just looking at the program and saying, well, I want to thank the person who did the prayer, the guest speaker, the person who did remarks, the person who presented. You can't do that. You have to have an idea of what they said, what the singers, what was the song that they, what rendition they made, how well was it received. So you have to be prepared for a vote of thanks. And please, do not thank yourself in the vote of thanks. Be creative in the way that you're actually doing it. Identify the lessons that you would have learned from the presentation. And remember, it's 2 to 3 minutes. Again, just like the introductions, you are not the feature speaker. It is not your show. So it is for other persons to be on the limelight. And for the vote of thanks, a key thing to remember, always thank the most important person. So if you had a feature speaker, that is the first person that you actually thank. And then you can talk about if the person will give the prayer, you can lump all the entertainers together, and then the master of ceremonies people tend to forget. Because as we said, what we practice is that the vote of thanks should be the last thing on the program. So that means the person moving or giving that vote of thanks need therefore to thank everybody and then tell the audience what is the next stage. Do not reintroduce the master of ceremonies or the chairman for that point, well, not for a meeting, but for a presentation, for them to come back. I want to thank the person who moved the vote of thanks. It's not necessary. The vote of thanks should be the very last thing that you actually do on the program. So these are the 5 main short speeches that I would want you to remember. Can we remember it? Can we remember the 5? Do you have anybody who can tell me what are the 5 set? Well, the other 4 that I spoke about, we had vote of thanks there. What are the other ones that we had? No takers? Tanya Kayo, right? Introductions, toasts. Introductions, toasts, yes. What else did you think about? Presenting awards and accepting an award. Very good. Pass 100%. So introductions, accepting an award, presenting an award, vote of thanks. We will want you to give toast as well. Never underestimate the audience intelligence. All of you knew some of this information from before. Never overestimate the previous knowledge. I did not assume that you knew it either. And never be late in any of your presentations. I had two main objectives, and I am trying to stick to my time allocated. I hope that at the end now here, I would have allowed most of you to have some insight into how to make a powerful speech and how to prepare short speeches. Were those objectives achieved? You can also put that in the chat. Has your stage changed from where you were? You have a little bit more knowledge that if you were an egg, okay, I can move on to become a larva or a pupa, or are you now an adult? I don't think that your stage can change totally from this 45-minute presentation. I believe that you need now to go out there and practice and accept every opportunity to speak so that then you can move further. I began with this quote, and I'm going to adapt it to my quote now. Take your idea, take your product, take your proposal, and present it in a professional manner using the tips shared, and you will get the recognition that you deserve. You will put those butterflies into formation. Remember, you will always have butterflies in your stomach. What you need to do is to make sure that you practice so that you can put them into some form of formation. And I encourage you all, Rotarians, Rotaractors, Interactors, ladies and gentlemen, in this call, see yourself developing that beautiful butterfly, no matter what stage you're at. It has been a pleasure presenting to you. Now I open the floor for any questions as it relates to becoming a bold and confident public speaker. Luana?
Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask the question or put it in the chat and we will address it.
Will it be shared via email? Yes, I will. An adaptation, because, you know, sometimes I had a lot of pictures and no words. So because of the French translation, we didn't want to put too many words in it, but I can share an abridged version for all those who would need it. And I think that at this point, Luana, you can put the tips as relates to the short speeches that
Yes.
can be placed in the chat for others.
I've put it a few seconds ago, so it can be
Okay.
downloaded. And
Okay.
the presentation, and along with the recording of this presentation, will be on the district's website
Okay.
within
Great.
a day or two.
Okay.
So Joy, let me ask the first question.
Okay.
When I have to give a speech, I usually identify someone at the back of the room and concentrate on that one person throughout the presentation. Sometimes it's embarrassing because, of course, you know, sometimes it's a male and you spend the whole 20, 30 minutes just looking at this person and, you know, you're just trying to get through to the end and, you know,
Yeah.
What other tips do you have for someone who needs to focus on something so as to get through speech?
Okay, I wouldn't focus on one person. I will try to, at least if you have a room, to have a four corner, because you can't look, because then people start looking at that one person. And if it is not your friend, they will wonder, well, what's wrong with me? You know, is there cold in my eye, nose? Why is she staring at me so all the time? And that person might get a little nervous. So if you have four, and you know, a friendly face, and it is good for you to scan the room. So I was at this particular, that's why I remember I picked somebody who was doing something. And when I talked about the vote of thanks, because that person, that we talked about the cameras being on here now, Zoom session is not easy to actually do that, to scan the room. But if you have a face-to-face group, just try to look at different points in the room, not just one particular point all the time, so that it looks like if you're looking at everybody. So try to scan the room and have those four, you know, you don't do your head like that, but we just need to scan so we maintain eye contact, because people want to feel you're speaking to me.
Great, thanks. Any more questions?
Okay. Somebody said, look slightly above everybody. Okay.
PP Paul Ryan has a question, has his hand raised.
Yes, Paul. He's still muted.
Paul, try to unmute yourself now. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, while he comes on, I see Darren is asking, do you always use a script or slides? I find slides are like notes, and I am never one to memorize a speech. And so therefore you should have short notes. Slides are like your short notes that will tell you what is coming. For a presentation like this, I can do it off the top of my head. If you have a speech, it is always good, in my opinion, to have some form of notes. And if you know it and you familiarize yourself with it, even if you don't stick to it slavishly and read word for word, at least it gives you a logical order to actually move down in. Okay. Could you maybe elaborate on no protocols explained? Some of us have not experienced it as yet. So what I was saying is that persons tend to say protocol haven't been established rather than recognizing the very important persons at the beginning of the speech. That is not to be done. What you want to do is to at least say, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Madam Minister, Mr. President, Madam Prime Minister. You need to at least acknowledge one or two persons, because sometimes when you have an audience, you might have a lot of distinguished persons. You don't want to then spend 5 minutes of your presentation listing everybody. But protocol having been established should not be practiced because it is not protocol. All right. We have always been advised to say all protocols haven't been established. So therefore, I am debunking that myth tonight.
I see that Paul has gone away from Paul Ryan. His hand is down, but he was waiting to ask a question. Maybe we could go back to them before.
I unmuted him, but he wasn't speaking.
Yeah.
Where is he?
Paul, do you want to still ask the question? And then there's another question in the chat.
If he can't say it verbally, he can put it in the chat then as well.
Okay.
Why is it not good to apologize if you're late, for example, at the introduction of the presentation, because it's done a lot anyway, and some people think it's polite because the audience might have been angry about waiting too long. I would if you had an accident on your way to the presentation, if you had work commitment and you couldn't be there, I would let the person introducing you make that apology, and then you go straight into your presentation. Because I believe that persons, when they do that, that is one of the last, you start off with that, and then the audience, although they know that you're late, that is what they remember. So I've had cases where it might have been a minister who was expected to be there and something happened at a constituent, it was a house fire or whatever. So let the person introducing you make the excuse for you, but you go straight into your presentation. That's a tip that I would like to share. Some people think it is impolite and rude not to apologize. Well, let somebody else do the apology, not necessarily you, right? If it is something that you could not avoid.
Joy, another
Yes.
thing that people do at the beginning, if they're terribly nervous, this is the first time they're speaking to an audience, like, I'm very nervous, I might make some mistakes.
Yes. So
Your
again,
views
that's
on
a kind
that,
of
apology.
It's an apology, because then the audience will say, well, this person isn't confident about what they're doing. Should I even listen to them? Because everybody, and this is something that I want the group to realize, everybody is nervous at the beginning of any sort of presentation, but it will be at different degrees. So rather than stating it, try to put that nervous energy into some sort of action, into your gestures, move that nervous energy to make you then give a powerful presentation. And that is what I will want persons to do, rather than, because you're literally apologizing because you're nervous. I'm not going to do a good job because I'm nervous. Therefore, why should I listen to you then? Right? I think you may have addressed this, but if stating that protocols haven't been established, what to say, do I call out all the names, which can be, no. So as I said, sorry, I did talk about it. So you can mention one or two very important persons, and then distinguished ladies and gentlemen, students, Rotarians, all, but at least acknowledge somebody rather than just trying to list all the names as well. Okay. Usually whenever I give a speech, and if I mess up a tiny bit, get nervous and mess up the other parts, how do I deal with recovery from those small hiccups? Practice, practice, practice. So all of us, we're human. We will make mistakes. We will mispronounce. We will state something. But because you're confident and because you practice, I practice this. I timed this before I actually did it. If you're going to sit down and talk to all the teddy bears, to your significant other, to your niece in Canada, whoever you're going to be presenting, you are practicing. And therefore, when you make any little slip up, that will become as nothing. But if you just stood up there and started to present and you were not confident and you had not gone through that practice, then is when you will start making mistakes. If you realize that you are getting out of control, stop, breathe, and then continue. A good breath in between is always good for you to breathe, catch yourself, and then continue. Smile with the audience and move on. Everybody wants you to succeed. Nobody wants you to stand up there and fail. Everybody wants you to do good. So they're looking out for you. So if you believe that, then you will do good. Sonia, did you take notes? Sonia is there.
Copious, copious. I'm tired. My hands hurting. Oh my goodness. But
You're
this is so good. This is so good. Nobody tells you how to do these things. You know, you stand up and you fly by the seat of your pants, and then you try to figure out if somebody doesn't say, "Oh, that was really good." Like, what did I do? Did I just mess up? How?
Yeah.
So if you take these things, you're bound to make a good speech, and you don't need that validation. You know you're pretty good. This is excellent. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and my notebook is full.
Okay. All right. I'm glad to be of assistance. I will send my bill to you only.
No, Liz. Liz is your sister from another mother, and not me.
One of the things I also want to say is in terms of practicing, always have somebody in Toastmasters. We practice giving evaluations and getting feedback. So I have somebody in this meeting here who's going to give me feedback at the end to tell me how many ahs and ams and where I could have improved on. So it's always good to have that feedback for somebody and take it as constructive development and not criticism, because all of us need to develop. So it is always, the feedback is good. You don't need validation to say, yes, you did a good job, but try when you're given that evaluation to have what we call a sandwich technique. What was good? Maybe areas to improve in the middle, and then areas and then end with something good. Always end with something good and make them feel good. So I hope she's listening to that.
Joy, we have a question from Lethan. Lethan, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. I have
Good evening.
a two-part question. One has to do with the appropriate use or the effective use of humor. Could you touch a little bit more on that in delivering a speech in order to keep your audience engaged? Yeah. And also, if your presentation includes an interaction, a direct interaction with the audience, where they can ask questions in between your presentation, how do you manage that if you're actually running out of time and have not completed your core message because of the questions you're getting?
Yeah, interesting questions, and thank you for that. Humor, sparingly. Unless you are a comedian, I wouldn't use too much humor in the presentations. I don't like the staged jokes because all of us get them every day through WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook. And so therefore some of them are overworked. but I like natural humor, and the best person to laugh at is yourself. So rather than call persons out, you laugh at things that you might have done. So humor, in my opinion, should be done sparingly and appropriately, and it should tie into what you are presenting. So if you have a story tied into what you want the supporting information to be about, then you can use that story. If it's a humor story, children make some nice statements that you might be able to use to get your point over, but use it sparingly. As it relates to questions and answers, again, that comes with preparation. So if you know the time allocated, then you have to cut down on your main presentation if you want to have the interaction in between. This is one of my first presentations like this for an online environment. I've always done this face-to-face. So therefore, for me, to get persons to, okay, put the things in the chat and be able to know, I had to practice before. And I wanted actually to do a little quiz. And then when we heard we're French, we had to amend it. So you have to look at the time, the message that you want, try to find the 3 main points and what you want that you want to get over to the audience. And then you have to manage your time if you want the questions and answers in between, so that you have that interaction going on. So it is preparation, in my opinion, to answer that question with questions and answers. What about impromptu speeches? Julianne, that's another 45-minute presentation by itself. But impromptu speeches, just like all other speeches, should have an opening, a body, and a conclusion. And because it's impromptu, there's some tips that we can share. So if at another point, if you want me to share some of those things in impromptu, that is something that I can actually do. But generally, just treat it like a speech as well. Repeat the beginning, speak about the main points, and then you conclude at the end. I often get caught up tongue-tied when speaking. I know my material, but when it comes to presenting, my voice always cracks. Do you have any tips for keeping your voice healthy to avoid this? Try not to do too much talking before. So the voice is gonna crack again because of nervousness and maybe because of dry mouth. You would notice that I have my glass of water sipping in between. So you can also have some water. There's some foods that they tell you to avoid so that you won't have that dry mouth. For sure, don't be chewing gum. So try not to talk. There's some motivational speakers, or we have the persons who speak and you will realize that they're by themselves before. Some persons will drink different concoctions to keep their throat smooth. Singers will do certain exercises. But again, I think a sip of water is the best thing to use, and see what works for you, and don't do too much talking even before you actually have to make that presentation. Some persons say a lot when giving a speech. How can persons avoid this when giving a speech? Practice. Why do people say as and ams? Americans say as a lot. The Caribbean people, we say or you know, right? That's because you are looking for fillers as you put your thoughts in action. In Toastmasters, I know that in Rotary you do fines. We fine persons for the number of ahs and ams that they make during the speech. The more you speak, the better you become. So I am sure that my friend in here will tell me how many ahs and ams I said, even in normal speaking, but it is something that you have to practice so that you do not make that mistake. And I can tell you that this is one of the things that I do when we're listening to a speaker. You tend to start counting how many times they say or those crutch words, and you don't listen to them. You stop listening to them and you actually start counting the ahs and the ams. Again, practice, practice, practice. Speak as often as you can so that you don't have to have those fillers for these ahs and ams.
Great.
I have gone
Any more
over
questions? That's it. Am I missing any raised hands? Guys, Liz, help me out. DG?
I don't know if Lathan's hand is still up.
Yeah.
I don't think that is, he
Lathan, you
hasn't
can take-
lowered it.
That might be an old hand.
You could take your hand down later.
Leighton,
Oh,
you
yeah,
wanted to ask
something.
another question? No?
Okay.
Okay, great. Joy, this has been a real pleasure. I learned so many things tonight. And the biggest one is protocols haven't been established is a no-no. So we now have to go and practice to do the right thing. And I have to practice to look at 4 people instead of 1 across the room. DG, any closing words before we go to the vote of thanks? I want to start practicing my public speaking protocols here. So absolutely, absolute last thing will be the vote of thanks tonight.
Indeed. Just a wonderful presentation, lots of information, and I know that every one of us here has learned something new tonight. And let's put it into practice for improving our speaking skills in all of these short speeches, you know. And as Rotarians, we definitely do have these opportunities many times. So this is the time to practice. I did say about 3 arms just now, and that just like upset me. So I will definitely be practicing these closing comments, but thank you so much. Really good evening. And I hope that our Rotarians and the attendees have taken some notes. Much appreciated.
Thank you, DG. And let me go say, before we get to the vote of thanks, Liz, did you want to say anything? And let me also publicly thank Liz now for recommending Joy to us. At the beginning of our Rotary year, the District Training Committee promised you sessions to help you to develop your leadership skills. So I hope that we are meeting your expectations in this regard, and we have a few more sessions planned for you to continue along that same path. So Liz, any comments for Joy?
No comments. I'll tell her in private. But what I can say to the audience here, Joy is no stranger to Rotary. Joy's nephew, and DG Sonia knows that Joy's nephew, Davy Gittins, was kind of like the poster child when we did dyslexia, when I think it was PDG Milton's year, and he was sharing his story. And he is now training to become an actuary. And her niece, Sharon Gittins, also attended the Immune Conference in Trinidad. So she's been close to Rotary for a while.
Close
but
enough.
Thank you,
She's
Joy.
a Rotarian, she just doesn't know it.
We should make her an honorary member, DG.
I feel so. I feel so.
All right, so Past President Cheryl, can you please deliver the vote of thanks?
Let me ask Cheryl. Cheryl, did you know that before, or she now told you to do that in the middle of the presentation?
Nope. She knew that since yesterday. We have our roll call, and everybody knows what they have to do. Cheryl,
just tease it. Just tease.
Not a problem. Started off wrong already. District Governor Sonia, past district governors, district trainer Luana, Rotarians, interactors, Rotaractors, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What an excellent and comprehensive presentation. I must say, like everyone else, I learned quite a lot. We have so much takeaways from this presentation. Joy, thank you so much. I am usually not very nervous doing my vote of thanks, but I am a bit nervous this evening because of all these tips, and I'm worried that I'm not going to be following it as you have prescribed. However, the learning was fantastic. Make no apologies. Visuals are very important. Don't speak too long. Forcefully finish. Forcefully and confidentially finish. Take your ideas, your products, your proposals. Use the tips and trips, folks, and you will get the recognition you deserve. Joy, it was a fantastic presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was a lot of learning, and we want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So, you know, I can tell you there were not many R's in your presentation. So if your coach or whoever is listening in for you tells you differently, they probably made a mistake. It was someone else they were checking. Okay. So thank you again. And we really, really appreciate your coming and sharing your knowledge and your tips and for successful public speaking. So thanks once again. To our training team, our district training team and the technical team, thank you so much as usual. And last but not least, our audience. Thank you for all the questions. You always add some excitement and some interest to our presentations. So thank you once again and good evening, everyone.
Thank you, PP Cheryl. And I think I was ticking the boxes as you were delivering the vote of thanks. You were within the minutes. You didn't say not once, and you did your protocols correctly. So thank you for that. All right. So that's a wrap for us for this evening. Thank you everyone for coming, and please stay safe and have a great rest of the evening and rest of the week. Take care. Bye.